Life Today Live. Randy Robinson here. I've got a wonderful guest. She's actually on the broadcast show today as well. And she's not live. This is a pre-recorded roll-in type interview. But we're going to talk about something. I've titled this one God's Safe Space. And that term has a kind of a whole new meaning right now in the United States, at least, in Canada. But I want to explore that idea, and I want you to hear part of testimony of Ashley Abercrombie. She's written a book called Rise of the Truth Teller. It looks like this. It is available wherever you want to buy books. I think we may have it too. You might check the Life Today site. I'm not exactly sure. But so there's two things. If you are in a position where you need a safe space, and we'll get into what that is, I want to tell you where to find it. Now, if you are a Christian, you're mature in your faith, and maybe, like me, that term has a negative space, or a negative connotation, rather. I want to explain your role in that, and that will all make a lot more sense as you stick around with us. Chat is open. I do invite you to jump in on all these locations where we're at: YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Twitter Periscope, and then my personal Twitch. The rest of them are the Life Today TV sites. And I also want to say this will be the last Life Today Live of the year. I'm going to spend some time with my family. So I hope you do that as well. Have a great Christmas, great New Year's. I will see you back at the top of 2020, right after I recover from New Year's. I'm kidding. I don't do anything crazy. I actually just stay at home. I'm always quite boring on New Year's Eve. But anyway, so this will be the last one until the beginning of January. So hope you guys have a great holiday season. I know I got all my kids in town. I have a house full because we have spouses. We have an engagement, and then the youngest has a boyfriend, and he's visiting as well, too. So we're having a great time. I hope you do, too. But let's get back to this idea. This is a good one. This is I'm kind of excited about today's discussion. So again, chat is open. Invite you to discuss because this was kind of eye-opening for me. Okay, so let's jump right in. I want you to meet Ashley Abercrombie, hear a little bit of her background, and when you see the tracker with this and where it goes, I think it's very helpful wherever you're at in your faith, or maybe if you have none at all. Here's Ashley Abercrombie.
So I was raised in this tiny little town where there were 14,000 people. So that's very, very tiny. Mm-hmm. And then I went off to college in the South, in North Carolina, mm-hmm. which, so much of that is so beautiful, right? This experience of being in a small town, the neighborliness, the connection points, like so great. And then I went off to college, and on my college campus, there were 28,000 students. So you can imagine it was like culture shock to the nines. And then college was a very difficult time for me. I had, a couple of the worst years of my life and struggled with eating disorder, bulimia, struggled with abuse of alcohol, using drugs, and just really trying to mask and escape my pain. I had never really fully learned how to have reciprocal relationships with others. I had never really fully learned how to take my mask off and admit that I had needs and admit that I had problems and that I needed help. I didn't know how to do that. And so I went through a series of events, suffered a rape on campus my sophomore year in college, which was a super difficult time. But because I had so learned to wear a mask, then I just got up the next morning and went to work as if nothing had happened to me. And so just kept trucking because that was the only way I really knew how to deal with pain.
Interesting. She was trucking through it, as she says. Just pushing through the pain. I mean, these are serious things. I think a lot of us tend to do that. We just kind of ignore things, hope they'll go away, push through the pain. From the outside, if you are someone looking at a person, wondering maybe why they behave the way they behave, or thinking that they're perfect and have it all together, I think this is a nice little segue into the idea of looking at the heart. God sees the heart. If you're a mature Christian, having the discernment to maybe see past the mask and see someone's heart, that's a great start. Towards seeing people for who they are and helping them. If you're wearing a mask, Stick with me. Let this be that turning point in your life where you decide to take it off. And I know you're frightened too, you're scared too, but that's where the healing is. So stick with me. To go back to Ashley, I want you to hear more where she was, so that you can relate to it, and so that you can relate to people who are currently where she once was. Again, Ashley Abercrombie.
Well, I think a lot of young people are taught to sort of contain their emotions and contain the difficult things that they might be facing. Even something as simple as having confusing thoughts or having doubts or having insecurities and having no real safe space to say, I feel very insecure about this, or I felt very rejected by this, or I felt abandoned by this, and not having any language around difficult things. So I think because of that, I just learned to mask everything, and you just put the mask on and you live out your life, and even though you're really hurting inside, you pretend like you're not. And that was sort of my world. And it came to a crumble when I left for college, having had this beautiful cushion in my hometown with teachers knowing me and my beautiful mother and all these different support systems in a way that helped me sort of contain all the things and wear the mask. And then going off to college and really not having a support system. I think for me that really was the hammer that came through that image that I kept trying to create, because I realized I could no longer contain it. And I think I was tired of pretending.
Okay, so I will admit my own bias here. We all have biases, okay? It's not good or bad inherently. But when she said this term safe space, I hear the politicized version of that because kind of what's going on in our country, and I'm conservative. We had Dennis Prager on the program not too long ago, and he has a movie called No Safe Spaces, okay? I've got kids in college, so we hear this idea of a safe space, and it's a little weird sometimes. It can mean different things to different people, and you can see it as a very good thing, a very necessary thing, or you can see it as a kind of a weird lefty kind of thing, where you can go scream because you don't like the president or something odd like that. Okay, so we've got this politicized idea. Let's back up. I had to do this. I had to go, okay, back off of my bias, cultural bias, political bias. What is a safe space? Well, let's go back to the original safe space, okay? What is the original safe space? A couple scriptures here for you. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth should change and the mountains slip into the heart of the sea, like climate change, I don't know. Though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains quake at its swelling pride. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy dwelling places of the Most High. God is in the midst of her, she will not be moved. God will help her when morning dawns. The nations made an uproar, the kingdoms tottered. Okay, we got war all over the place. He raised his voice, the earth melted, in other words, submitted to God. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our stronghold. Psalm 27:5. For in the day of trouble he will conceal me in his tabernacle. In the secret place of his tent he will hide me. He will lift me up on the rock. Psalm 31:19. How great is your goodness, which you have stored up for those who fear you, which you have wrought for those who take refuge in you before the sons of men. Psalm 91:1-4. He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say to the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. What better safe space is that? For it is he who delivers you from the snare of the trapper and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with his pinions. Under his wings you may seek refuge. His faithfulness is a shield and a bulwark. Psalm 145:18-19. The Lord is near to all who call upon him, to all who call upon him in truth. He will fulfill the desire of those who fear him. He will also hear their cry and will save them. Okay, the original safe space is God. And I think where some of us may have a negative connotation, it is because God creates and Satan counterfeits. God created the original safe space for mankind. It is him. when we are struggling, when we have pain, instead of pushing through the pain like Ashley's talking about doing, we can go to that safe space of God. Now, if we go to some other counterfeit safe space, it's not good. It's not a good place to be. And I'm going to tell you how a little bit later, because I want you to hear it as it unfolds in Ashley's story, how you as a mature Christian can be that safe space for people. But I want to go back to Ashley. I want you to hear more of her story so you can see where people live a lot of times and why they need a safe space.
I don't know if everybody processes it that way. I mean, I think some people may go deeper in addiction. Some people may throw themselves into work. Some people may, throw themselves into shame. I mean, there's so many ways that I think women navigate the very difficult things that happen to us throughout our lifetime. But that was my way. And I also had an abortion in my college years, a very difficult time. It was the only time in my life that I had the abortion and said, I never want to speak about this to anyone ever again. And I prayed that I wouldn't wake up the next morning. But I did wake up. And then I made the decision to move across the country. And I was hoping to escape my life. Like, let me just get out of here. Maybe that's the solution.
How'd that go?
It went terribly.
It goes with you, doesn't it?
It sure does, because everywhere you go, there you are. And so unfortunately for me, I had to really start facing down my past and had to really start facing down my pain and really look at it and begin to discover that God is a God who's with us in our pain. That He's not aloof to our circumstances and He's not absent from our circumstances, but He's very present in pain and He's able to be with us. And I also got to learn in my healing process that God accepts me where I am, that He's comfortable with brokenness, that He doesn't expect me to be perfect, that He doesn't expect me to put a mask on and come to Him, that I don't have to clean myself up first. I can just come.
Do you know any runners? Have you been a runner? Boy, it really takes some spiritual maturity to spot someone when they're running. Sometimes it's really obvious, but you know what I'm saying. We need to not be quick to condemn people in their sin. That's not to say we accept it at all, not at all. But, Jesus came with grace and truth, fully in grace, fully in truth. When we start with the grace, when we see somebody who's a runner, we can spot it and go, okay, what are they running from? Boy, she said so much there at the end. To help to bring people from that point of running to facing their pain. And let me tell you, you don't need to do it alone. People don't need to do that alone. That's a big part of what being the church is to be there with people when they face their pain. But we need to try to bring them to a point where they realize that God is present in their pain. He is that safe space. He is that shelter. And you can bring whatever you want to him, and he will help you face up to it and deal with it and let it not be something you need to run from your whole life. More from Ashley. She says so much good stuff. This is Ashley Abercrombie again.
I think that there is sort of this a lie about brokenness where we assume that everybody is all good or all bad. And I think especially in the world that we're living in today, it's very easy to push people into a corner or push them into a camp or just live in a very polarized fashion. And I don't think that's new. I certainly think digital media has made that worse, but I don't think that's new. And so for me, I think that there was so much about me that's still the same. I loved to laugh. I loved to write. I loved to do all the things that I did. It was funny. I had great relationships, but I just had not learned yet to have reciprocal relationships.
Gotcha.
So I didn't know how to be in a relationship and own my part. And I was so good at giving other people advice and allowing them to have safe space, but I also didn't know how to say, I need some too, and I'm really hurting. And so I think so much of me was the same, but because I couldn't find a healthy outlet, because I had legitimate needs, then I started meeting them in illegitimate ways.
We're quick in our culture today to call people evil. You're bad. You're just evil. And that's not all coming from the church or Christians. I mean, it's coming from the secular world. I don't know, maybe I think as much or more, but a lot. Okay, so it comes from all sides. We don't need to be there as Christians. We need to recognize brokenness She talks about the lie of brokenness, where you see someone who's broken and they're acting like they're broken, or maybe they're running from their brokenness, and we immediately want to label them. We don't need to condemn them. We don't accept the wrongdoing. Yes, we condemn wrongdoing, absolutely. But the people, we need to strive for the redemption of the person, rather, and that means we can't live polarized. That means we have to reach across. We have to get our hands dirty, right? As believers. How many times have you seen people? Have you been that person? I know I've been that person. You have legitimate needs, and they're legitimate, but you try to meet them in illegitimate ways. And so suddenly we say, okay, I'm a person who meets my legitimate need in an illegitimate way. Therefore, you must accept me as I am and accept my illegitimate ways of meeting my illegitimate needs. And that's where the untruth gets in. That's where we're mixing truth and lie, which is very dangerous, very potent, very damaging to people. We have to be wise enough and gentle enough to separate the truth from the lie, to say, okay, yes, you have this legitimate need, but the way you are meeting it is an illegitimate way. It's what we call sin. So I love that sinner, but I don't accept that sin. And so I'm going to work to eradicate that sin for the salvation of the sinner, right? So this is where Ashley was, meeting her legitimate needs in illegitimate ways, trying to mask her pain. A rape, an abortion, an addiction. I mean, these are serious needs, serious problems. And a lot of it was an attempt to just mask that pain. So she had needs. She was meeting them in illegitimate ways. And what did she need? She needed a serious breakthrough. She needed a real safe space, a godly safe space, not some artificial human safe space. I want to go back to her. She talks about something that I think the church really needs to pay attention to. And I actually know a lot of them that are. Many are. And I think our church has woken up to our culture in a healthy way, in a lot of ways. So this is back to Ashley Abercrombie.
In kind of the social work, I'm not an expert, but in the social work field, they talk about this idea of wraparound services. And I really love that. So when a person or a client comes, they need what they call wraparound services, which means they may need some therapy. They also need a great community. They also might need support groups. And there's very different outlets that kind of put support around a person, the wraparound services that will enable them to walk in wholeness. And I actually don't think that we're very different. I think that we do need a beautiful rooted faith community and strong, mutual, reciprocal, respectful relationships where we can genuinely be ourselves and we can genuinely allow others to be themselves and create that safe space. I think therapy is a beautiful idea. I think that support groups are beautiful. Recovery has been a really powerful tool in my life. 16 years of working steps and, not living in denial and choosing to be courageous and serving others and getting up every day and doing the work. And so I think that's what it takes for us.
And Celebrate Recovery is a great program that's been in a lot of churches. A lot of churches are offering counseling, or at least referring to a qualified counselor. My church is big with a food pantry and food distribution. So this idea of wholeness, being everything to everybody, I think that's what it means when Paul says that. We need to be there to meet their needs and have this holistic view of meeting people's needs, because what happens is I think God gets people to a point of recognition that they have that need, and the church is supposed to be there when they recognize it, that natural place. When people go, I need a safe space, I think the first thing that should pop into their head is the church. It's not always hasn't been, but it can be, and it should be, and that starts with you and me. I want you to hear more of Ashley's testimony, because it's really beautiful. Her worst moment was her best moment, and a lot of times we don't realize that. And if you're one wearing the mask, you're running from your pain, this is the point that you want to get to. because it really will be your turnaround. In fact, it's step one in the 12-step recovery program.
One of the most beautiful experiences I had was I was in college right before I was about to move across the country to Los Angeles. And I was driving around. At the time, I used to smoke menthol cigarettes. So I just grabbed a pack of cigarettes, got in my car, I drove around, and I landed in a parking lot, just an empty parking lot. And just like a movie, the sky just opened up and just started dumping buckets of rain. And I remember just sitting in my car and shouting, "Where are you, God? Where are you, God?" And just so, like, where are you in the midst of all this mess? Like, where are you, God? Like, where are you? And through that process, I just really felt like the Lord took like a gentle hammer on a dam I had built. And it was that moment that just cracked it open. And I felt the love of God and I felt the presence of God. And nothing was changing in my life, but I felt free to admit for the very first time, my life is totally out of control.
That's a huge change.
It's huge. And just to admit to God and to myself, really, because it's not like God didn't know, but to admit to myself, I need help. Like, I'm not capable of managing this and I'm not capable of fixing this. Like, God, I need you to help me.
That's huge.
It was huge. And it was a journey for me to be able to do that with others. Like, that took more time. But the fact that I had openly admitted to myself and to God started me, like, propelled me to move into the position where I could start to get help and start to be able to receive from others.
Yeah.
Do you realize that we work in tandem with the Holy Spirit to bring people to Christ? By the word of our testimony and the testimony of the Holy Spirit, people are drawn to God. We don't have to tell people they shouldn't smoke menthol cigarettes. We shouldn't have to tell them that they shouldn't have abortions, that they shouldn't be addicted to things. I mean, I'm not saying we shouldn't say that those things are wrong. I'm saying that, like Ashley says, most people know. They know. They know the sin in their own lives. When they get to that point where they're crying out for help, we need to be there for them. I want you to hear this. This to me is the highlight of today, okay? This is what happened. This is what brought her back around. So Ashley had, she'd been raped, she'd had an abortion in a separate incident, she had an addiction, yet she had a knowledge of God. She cried out to God, asking, "Where is he?" She moved across the country, running from all her problems. And then this happens, and this is beautiful. This, to me, illustrates what it means to be the church. Ashley Abercrombie.
I learned from a dear friend of mine at the very beginning of my journey. And I remember her showing up at my house after I had totally lied on the phone and said I was completely fine. Like, I'm fine, everything's fine. And she showed up at my house and knocked on my door. And when I saw her standing there, I fell on the floor and just started bawling, just crying. And she laid down on the floor with me and just cried. She cried with me, and for the first time ever, I opened up and shared my story. And she didn't try to fix me. She didn't try to advise me. She didn't act like she was better than me. She just was with me. And I think that so much of that was so healing for me because I realized she didn't have a leg up. And maybe that's a personal fear of mine, that people would take advantage of me or that they would feel like, they have some kind of higher, like, I'm here to help you. And so I think in her relating to me in a reciprocal way, she taught me that God looks at me that way, that he not only loves me because he wants to help me, but he loves me because he made me and because I'm a human being.
We need to be laying on the floor crying with people. I am such a fixer. Out of wanting to help, my tendency is to go in and fix and say, well, you should do this, you should do that. And I mean it in all the best ways, but let me tell you, that's not always the best solution. I wouldn't have known that her insecurity was people having superiority over her and using it against her. I wouldn't have known that. She needed someone to lay on the floor and cry with her, and thank God, God sent just that person. There's not a one-size-fits-all. I get that. Maybe some people are like me. I would need someone to talk to me very directly and very straight and to show me the right path to be on. That's me. That's what I respond to. She needed someone to lay on the floor and cry with her. We need to be that sensitive church that says, Lord, guide me, direct me, and not that, there still is that legalistic kind of side that says, well, you just got to do it. And it drives you crazy. Sometimes we just need to lay on the floor and cry with people. It's such a beautiful thing. What happened? What happened when she experienced that kind of just love, just that acceptance? This is more of her story. This is such a good story.
People know, like, I knew that all the drugs and alcohol weren't great for me. I knew that the eating disorder was destroying me. I knew that the dysfunctional relationships I had in my life weren't good.
You need somebody to tell you.
Right. Like, I didn't need her to sit in the floor in front of me and tell me all the things I need to fix in my life. Like, I didn't already know. Like, people are not dumb, They're not. But we make decisions based on our context, and we make decisions based on, what has happened before we're in these situations. So I think a lot of Christians would do better just to ask questions and to be available. And, that's actually what led me back to church, because in my college years, I had experienced name calling and people, other Christians making assumptions about me and saying things to me, but also inviting me to their meetings to get saved. I was saved, but they didn't ask me any questions. They didn't ask me why I was the way that I was. And so then meeting Christians like my friend, I was like, I want to come to church with you. Like, I've never met believers who just love me because I'm a human being that God made.
Yeah.
And that was revolutionary for me. It's like, it just further proved that I didn't have to clean myself up before I come to God. And it further proved that my value wasn't contingent on whether I made the best decisions or not, but my value is contingent on the God who made me. And I think that is like, wow, what a gift.
Oh, man. That just as I am, truth, that we can come to God just as we are. He'll clean us up. We don't have to clean ourselves up to get in His presence. In fact, you may never get in His presence if you wait until you're clean enough, because you never will be. I love this, right? Bobby, wowzers, right? I don't know, I'm almost out of words. It's like, man, just the love of God and that kind of thing. Here's what I want to impress upon you. Two things. If you need that safe space, God is that safe space, okay? And no matter what you've been through, no matter what negative experience you may have had around a church, find one. Look for those Christians who will lay on the floor with you, okay? Because we're out here. But God is the only safe space that will truly satisfy and truly heal you and fully accept you and fully welcome you. You get in some man-made safe space, I promise you it's going to turn on you at some point, okay? We tend to eat our own as humans, right? God will never forsake you, never fail you, never not love you, okay? So He's your safe space. Number two, if you are a mature Christian, be that safe space for somebody. Be that person that, if needed, just lays on the floor and cries with someone, right? If needed, speaks a word of correction or a word of encouragement. Someone who has a sensitivity to the Holy Spirit to be what that other person needs at that time in order to bring them closer to God, back to God, into His presence, okay? We can be that safe space. We should be that safe space. That's what God wants. God always, always works His will through willing people. So let's be that willing person in the life of another. I want to cap it off with this last clip of Ashley Abercrombie. Again, her book is called Rise of the Truth Teller. It's available now. I think it's probably at Life Today. I didn't check before coming on the air, and I should have, but I didn't. But I want to go back to this last clip of Ashley because this is what happens when you come back to God or when you come to God for the first time. And this is what we should be seeking for other people, not to fix them, not to correct them, not to tell them that they're going to hell, not to condemn them. This is where we should desire all people to be, where Ashley got.
It felt a little like, I've always been here, like, welcome home. That's what it felt like to me. Like, I've always been here. I've always loved you. Like, I didn't want you to get it together first. Like, I've always had a heart for you. I've always been right here in all the bad and all the good and all the monotony of life. Like, I've been right here. And I think because He taught me that, then I was able to start receiving that from others and recognizing that people just wanted to be with me because I'm awesome and God made me. And I like to be with others because they're made in His image and they're awesome and He made them. It's a powerful thing God taught me.
That's it. I just love that. I hope this has been encouragement to you, a little eye opener to you for you. I know I needed the reminder in my life, so talking to her was such a blessing, because people want wholeness, whether they admit it or not. Everybody wants wholeness. Nobody likes to be damaged goods their whole lives, right? And the place of healing is in Jesus Christ. It is in coming to God. And so I just wanted to remind you today, take this chance to let you hear Ashley's testimony, and just remind you today that as his people, we are to be that safe space. We are to be that one that draws people back to God so that they can be whole. So there's your encouragement. There's your hopefully blessing for today. And Lord, if you're that person who's running still, who's masking the pain, just try God. Just give him a chance. He wants nothing but good for you. He wants to make you whole. And just pray that God would continue bringing you back to him. Because guess what? Dropping in on this little video is part of God's plan. Not an accident. If you're running from God and you happen to watch this whole thing, it's not an accident. He's calling you back. He's your safe space. Come to the shelter. Come find healing. Come find wholeness, and come back for more Life Today Live. Appreciate you guys all being here with me. Bobby, Judy, I don't know how to pronounce some of these names. Diane, I saw you out there, John. Saw you, Dan. Saw you, Sheila. Tracy, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for checking it out. I will see you again next time on Life Today Live.
Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead, but it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop.